Good morning, YouTube. It's 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and it's Sunday, and it is also Easter. So even though it's a holiday, we're still going to do a project. Even though we put out a bonus project on Friday, still going to have a project regardless. So here we go. I'm trying to get rid of all of this extra scrap wood that has been laying around in the garage for the past year, and just decided to do something that we've done in the past previously, but add a little bit of a flair to it. So simple project, something we've already done, but just going to do something slightly different. So circled up 3 pieces of wood that we're going to cut out of this board that's just been laying around, take it over to the table saw, cut everything down, and try not to lose our fingers in the process. I love using the table saw, but it makes me nervous. This is like the second tool that I use that kind of makes me kind of question what I'm doing. The miter saw being the number one thing. But got everything cut down, just going to take some wood glue, and essentially we're just going to pancake these all together and glue them up, put them in some grips, and then wait about 24 hours, and then we're going to cut them down. And of course, here I am not using a brush. You can use your fingers. It's messy, and I don't recommend that, but you can also do that. So, do what you got laying around the workshop. But essentially, we're just going to get this all put together, and then we're going to, make something cool out of it. And you guys have already seen the thumbnail, so you guys kind of know what we're going for here. But going to take some just regular boring pine boards and put them together and try to make something good. And this part was kind of a pain in the butt. What you won't see here is me having to unclip all of these and basically line everything up, because if it's not aligned properly, it's not going to come out too good. But here we go, 24 hours later, taking these off. And got a nice, packaged sandwich here. And we were like, okay, cool, we can work with this. Nothing that we haven't done previously in the past. So then we're going to set up my bandsaw and try not to lose my fingers while I cut out these wedge portions of it. If you guys go back and watch some of my old videos, like way back in the day, I used to just take all this and put it onto the lathe and then just work it down. And there's my shoddy camera work. The camera's kind of like zoomed in here because I'm doing this in my workshop in the middle of the night. But I used to just put the whole square onto the lathe and then just work it down. But I decided I have the tools to fix that and just took care of it. And here's an important thing. Instead of having scrap wood, just throw it away. Throw it away. So I'm being better about throwing away scrap wood instead of hanging on to it for like years and never doing anything with it. So here we are putting on the faceplate, and this is going to go relatively well. You know why? Because it's pine and it's very soft, and I don't have any issues working with pine wood. It's every other wood and piece of epoxy that I definitely have issues with. So here we are, faceplate goes on, absolutely no problem here. Don't have to worry about it cracking, and it's attached, so we're already off to a good start. And then we're just going to go ahead and throw it onto the lathe, and you can see just how big this piece is comparatively with everything else that is on the lathe. So giant piece of pine boards here just stuck together like this. And the great thing about cutting it down and already making a circle is that a majority of the work is already done. So all you have to do is come back and then just round everything out. And then you can just go ahead and make a nice cylindrical shape out of it. And it really doesn't take much effort after this. So here we are, just getting everything cut down the way that we kind of want it to. And then I'm deciding on how much material we're actually going to save, because we're going to do an exaggerated lip on this one. Even though we've kind of done projects like this in the past, just doing an exaggerated lip makes the bowl a little bit cooler instead of having those deep flat edges on the side of it. So we're just cutting this down and then just seeing what the material looks like. It actually ended up doing a lot of the work with the square carbide instead of the round one, but we just came back and switched up tools as we needed to. So this part, really didn't have a lot of issues here. And there I am trying to move my tailstock as it's slowly creeping up. No, that's not a ghost, that's just the vibration of the lathe moving that. And I need to get better about moving stuff out of the way, because that can be kind of dangerous. And looking back on the footage, I didn't even realize just how much that walked up on me like that. But got it to a nice shape that we want. And now we can start making the mortise portion of this. And again, this being pine board, it really doesn't take much effort here. It's going to eat through those chisels really easily. And we're going to go ahead and get this to a nice depth. I ended up making the mortise a little bit bigger than I needed it, but overall was pretty happy with it, just getting to a nice depth so that the chuck jaws will attach to it without any kind of like real issue. And then of course taking the faceplate off, no issues there because it's pine and it's very soft wood and you don't have to worry about that as much. So then we get it set up, and now we're going to make everything nice and flat. And you can see there we're using the tailstock again to kind of stabilize it, because there have been times when I don't use the tailstock and then it just flies off the lathe. So I'm trying to avoid that now that we've been doing this for like over 5 years. But pretty happy how that turned out. Everything is in a nice shape, and now we can actually start the gouging portion of it. And this part really didn't take much time at all, but you're going to see we're going to do like an exaggerated lip of the bowl to where it kind of like transitions into the center of the bowl. Instead of just going for a deep gouge initially, we're just taking layer by layer and making more of a slope instead of those deep edges. And you'll see what I'm talking about. If you go back and look at the thumbnail, you can see just what that looks like as well. But working off a lot of good material and that deep V base on the headstock there. Really no issues here. So that makes this job a lot easier. So here we are, just a different viewpoint. And you can just see how large this plate is. It's ginormous. It's not ginormous. For this lathe, it's probably like the higher echelon of like how big you could go for these kinds of projects, but it's really light material. It's not heavy, so it doesn't vibrate a lot on the chuck, but you can feel a little bit of feedback when you're working the chisels, but it's not too bad. So then what we did is come back and sand it. We went from 50 to 80 grit and really didn't spend a whole lot of time sanding, because I'm going to do my favorite thing, which is burning the pine wood. You can just see all the scrap material here. You can just see the oblong shape and the kind of like exaggerated edge there. It's more of a plate than it is a bowl, but it looks pretty cool. Not worried about it. And then just all the shavings that kind of come with that. Looks pretty cool. Not worried about it. So we're going to get the workshop cleaned up, and then we are going to burn the hell out of it. So taking the torch, and I'm sorry for those that just want me to not burn pine. This is probably one of my favorite things to do with pine board, because you got to do something with it, because it looks just kind of plain Jane if you don't really do anything with it. And there I am trying to flip it like a tortilla, trying not to burn my fingers, but this is probably the most fun thing to do with pine board, is just burn it like this. And try not to wake up the neighbors at like 5 o'clock in the morning when you're torching stuff in your backyard. But, you know, it was a success. And now what we're doing is I love this aesthetic. I love how this looks. Taking the Dremel and making little potholes in it. As much as I like the look, it does take a lot of effort and time and vibration on the chisel. And you can see me there. I've got a double respirator on, because these little pieces, every time you gouged in, there was dust and particulates and like the burnt pine that I'm like inhaling basically. But this looks really, really cool. I love how this looks. Here we are a little bit later in the project, almost halfway through it. And I think this took, realistically, this takes like 30 to 45 minutes to do once you clean it up and everything, but it feels like a much longer process, and I probably need to get a larger burr, but this one seems to work perfectly fine. I've learned from the previous projects just how to do this technique a little bit easier. And then this is my favorite part here, just cleaning it up. And in spite of just how long this took, you can still see the spots where I'll have to go back and clean it up a little bit. But I won't make you guys watch that. But I did go back up and touch up some parts of it that had been missed. So what you guys didn't see is me come back and then hit it with like 30-minute lacquer, let that dry overnight, and then we're going to hit it with a couple of pastel colors. And I initially just wanted to do like small little dots of epoxy in these small little craters. I didn't really have a plan for how it turned out, but I more or less kind of just messed this up. So what I took were like 3 colors that kind of like matched the theme for Easter, and we're just going to mix that up. Had some 10 mil syringes, and I was just going to put them in just where the little potholes were. But as I got into the project, it just started running everywhere. And I'm like, okay, this is not conducive to what I want it to be. But I mixed the colors up, and you guys will see here in just a little bit just how it ended up turning out. So here I am taking my time trying to just put it in the small little craters, and then I noticed that I started to overfill, and I'm going, okay, this is just a mess. So then I just came back and put them near each other. So I just took the 3 colors and then just poured them around, and then I just started to turn it into the actual epoxy, or just roll it around And I'm like, okay, well, we're already in it. We gotta do something. And it made this really cool aesthetic looking like pastel kind of colors. So I called this the Easter Bowl project, and it looks really cool. Once the epoxy dried, it didn't look too bad. And here I am out in the sun trying to shape it and roll that epoxy. I should have just brushed it in there. That probably would have been a better technique. But, you learn from all these mistakes, and probably the next one that we do will end up doing that. But I really like how this kind of like looks. It looks really, really cool. I probably did use too much epoxy with it, but overall pretty happy how it turns out. And then we just put it in the pressure pot for 4.5 hours to get all those bubbles out. And then this is what it looked like once I took it out. And yes, there's a giant middle portion of just epoxy in the middle, and you can kind of see where those indentations are. But the camera really doesn't give it justice for what it looks like. But overall, pretty happy how this turned out. So this is this year's Easter project, kind of pastel colors in a bowl. But hope you guys liked it. Hope everybody had a good Easter. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. But overall, pretty happy how this turned out. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Alright, so project is done, and admittingly did not turn out exactly how I envisioned, but still pretty cool for this first generation of bowls. So I know I've done bowls like this in the past, but never with the epoxy like that. And I think the epoxy is going to set up, and it's going to look okay. Just something different that kind of like sealed in that wood a little bit, but it's still cool Easter colors that kind of blended in together. But ideally, I wanted it to come out a little bit different. It just didn't. And sometimes woodworking projects just don't work out the way you envisioned. But I think, close up, the camera really doesn't do it justice, but I kind of like it. I kind of like how it fills in those gaps and kind of gives it a little different color and perspective. But not bad, I think turned out unique, I would say, which is another nice way of saying didn't go exactly according to plan. But overall, happy how it turned out. We still got a cool little bowl out of it. The epoxy's still a little bit wet. But you guys are obviously watching this on Easter. Hope everybody's having a good holiday. Probably going to put treats and candies in this when the epoxy completely dries. But overall, pretty happy with it. So hope you guys liked it. Hope you got something out of it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.